pioneer 11-man team to pilot the activities of the Constitutional Council in Cameroon have been sworn in the first ever Congress grouping members of the upper and lower houses of Parliament. The ceremony that took place in the nation's capital Yaoundé, chaired by the House Speaker Kavaye Gejibri. In this newscast, we take you to the ceremony that took place this morning in the nation's capital. Also ahead, we would be taking you to the chief town of the northwest region of Cameroon to talk about yet another case of suicide. What is happening in that part of the country, given that it is not the first time that this is happening in less than 3 months. Plus, we take you as well to the west region of Cameroon to talk about 2 kidnapped young girls that have so far been released after they spent close to a month in captivity. Those are headlines. Stay with us. We shall be right back. Good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching the primetime newscast on Equinox Television. We thank you so much for joining us. It is historic. In Cameroon, the 11 appointed members of the Constitutional Council have taken the oath of office in a ceremony that took place today in the nation's capital, Yaoundé, chaired by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Kavaye Gejibri. The pioneer members accepted to rest
another page added in the political history of Cameroon. This as all 11 appointed members of the Constitutional Council took the oath into office in the first ever Congress grouping the 2 houses of Parliament. The initiated pioneer members accepted to respect the laws of Cameroon, exercise their duties with impartiality, honesty, keep professional secrets, and ensure the respect of the law of Cameroon. The initiation ritual began with the President of the Constitutional Council, Clement Atangana. I swear that I will faithfully and diligently discharge my duties in an impartial manner in accordance with the Constitution to uphold the confidentiality of deliberations and voting. Not to take any public stance, provides consultation on matters that fall under the competence of the Council. The oath-taking ceremony was coordinated by the Congress Chairman, Kavaye Gejibri. The Constitutional Council members are expected to handle matters like conflicts involving state institutions, the states, and finally between regions, internal regulations of the National Assembly and Senate. The Constitutional Council also rules on the constitutionality of law, treaties, and international agreements to protect the state against international interference, which can sometimes be in violation of state sovereignty. Section 48 of the revised law makes provision for the Council overseeing the regularity of presidential and legislative elections and also referendums. The Constitutional Council is also charged with the proclamation of results of both elections.
And the Constitutional Council was put in place or came decades after it was expected. The members that were sworn in to office in the nation's capital, Yaoundé, today were appointed on the 7th of February 2018. What would be the role of the long-awaited institution in Cameroon? Let's have the answers in the following report. The function of the Constitutional Council cuts across all institutions in Cameroon as the highest jurisdiction would rule on all constitutional matters. The institution would give final ruling on laws, treaties, international agreements, the standing orders of the National Assembly and the Senate prior to implementation. Matters could be referred to the Constitutional Council by the head of state, the President of the National Assembly, the President of the Senate, or 1/3 of members of each houses of Parliament. Regarding its role with electoral issues, the 11-man team of the Constitutional Council have to ensure the regularity of the presidential and parliamentary elections and referendum operations in Cameroon. The institution is equally charged with the proclamation of election results. Any candidate or political party who participated in the election and puts the regularity of the election to question can bring the matter before the council to decide. Once a matter is referred to the Constitutional Council, it would give ruling within 15 days, and its decision shall not be subject to any appeal. In the event of death, resignation of a member or incapacity, a replacement shall be designated by the competent authorities or body concerned to complete the term of office. The members of the Constitutional Council appointed by the President of the Republic have a renewable term of office of 6 years. We now talk about the newly appointed ministers that have so far spent their first day in duty after taking the command baton that was yesterday in separate ceremonies that were chaired by the Prime Minister, head of government. He called on the newly appointed ministers to be united and work towards achieving the same goal. Let's have the details of the report with Smart Njikan Gabriel.
I hereby declare you commissioned into your functions of Minister of Secondary Education. I wish you total success.
It was a similar ritual for the 11 newly appointed government officials installed on Monday. Prime Minister Yang Philemon in all reminded them of their new responsibilities, just like the new members coming into government and the old guards who simply changed offices. The challenges ahead are enormous. Reasons why everyone is supposed to get into action. All eyes are now focused on the new ministers of decentralization and local development, and also the Minister of Territorial Administration, because their coming into office is at a time when Cameroonians are expecting much from them, same as those heading the economy and finance, water and energy, not forgetting secondary education and transport. All have inherited strategic positions which much is expected from them. In all office stopovers, the Prime Minister spent less time in putting the new officials into power. A very strong signal which is for them to get into work immediately. That indicates the young 4 team has no time to waste.
And during the 2nd of March cabinet shake-up that took place a few days ago, it should be noted that there were a lot of surprises. According to several Cameroonians, some ministers considered as unshakable were simply booted out by the presidential decree on the 2nd of March 2018. And how was their attitude during the installation ceremonies of yesterday? Sumanji Kangebre once again has the details.
Monsieur Nebengo Edgar.
In the different stopover of the Prime Minister as he installed into office newly appointed government officials, that of the incoming minister and outgoing Minister of Transport was very peculiar. At the center of attraction was Edgar Alain Nebengo, undisturbed and very calm. He arrived at the Transport Ministry with his daughter. At the corridors of the ministry, it was a total mobilization of staff who have lined up to bid the minister farewell. Unfortunately, the minister couldn't utter a word to our microphones. He used the time to shake hands with those he has worked with for the past 2 years. Our attempt at getting into the real cause of the incident which occurred at his residence involving a colleague of Le Jeune newspaper wasn't possible. Another government official who made a lot of headline stories, Ange Michel Anguen, he also appeared very calm on the eve of the tug-of-war with the director of ENAM. Ange Michel Anguen was fired at the time. He just gave a quarrel letter to Linus Menjana. The long exchange of greetings with his next of kings, Joseph Lee, from the same East region certainly made him feel good.
Other ministers who also left the government include Jean-Baptiste Boukam, Ngole Philippe Ngwese, and Louis-Max Aina Ohanja. They live at the disappointment of their closets, but were certainly happy because their work was recognized by the head of state as the PM echoed in all of the ministries he passed by.
And some 2 young girls abducted few days ago, that was close to a month ago, by some yet to be identified individuals in Bafoussam of the western region of Cameroon have finally returned home. They were released after spending more than 20 days in captivity. Details with Babla Jonathan.
The prefect of the Mifi division received 13-year-old Yogo Kamdem and Kenye Kamdem Onel, 15. Their parents, other relatives, friends, and the population of Tungankat Quarter in Cameroon's West Regional Chieftown Bafoussam have equally converged to welcome back home the 2 former hostages. After 24 days in captivity, they were released Sunday following the payment of ransom, an undisclosed amount of money. They said they were freed at about 7:30 p.m. at the entrance into the town from Banjul. They recognized Total Njandam while on a motorbike. Their eyes were tied with a piece of cloth from the quarter right to the main road, where they were given 2,000 francs yearly and asked to take a bike and go back home. Upon their arrival, the 2 students of Government Bilingual High School Bafoussam were subjected to medical checkup at the Bafoussam Regional Hospital. Their kidnappers are still on the run. They kidnapped the 2 girls on the 9th of February 8, 2018, demanding for a 4 million francs CFA ransom.
And for the past 3 months, at least 3 people have committed suicide by hanging in Bamenda, the chieftain of the northwest region of Cameroon. Outcomes of investigations opened by security forces in that part of Cameroon are still highly awaited. The latest incident was yesterday in the Mulang neighborhood that has left local inhabitants in shock. Our reporter Rabiato Aliyu tells us more in the following report.
In this tight outdoor bathroom is the lifeless body of a 53-year-old man hung onto a rope. Thomas Molio is the name of the victim, who was one of the tenants in a compound at the Mulang neighborhood in Bamenda, northwest region.
Now what you really take part? I don't think more. If a man call me from my house, I go for a dog.
His sister, in tears, explains that no one can explain what prompted the victim to take away his own life. She adds that he was the lone male child in the family before his passing. Neighbors, in shock, refused to testify whether Thomas Molio had challenges recently. Security forces visited the compound, the victim's room, to take stock of the situation and open investigations. This is the 3rd case of suicide reported in Bamenda in less than 4 months.
And in Bamenda, still in the northwest region of Cameroon, businesses are crippling as a result of the current socio-political crisis rocking the 2 Anglophone regions of Cameroon. Owners of credit unions say that the rate of savings has dropped drastically as well as a result of the Anglophone crisis. Let us see how local inhabitants are coping as a result of the situation in the following report. It is more than 1 year that the Anglophone crisis escalated. It has severely affected economic activities in the northwest region of Cameroon. In Bamenda, for instance, the rate of turnover has dropped drastically from wholesalers right down to hawkers. Even with the limited income, the prices of products have witnessed a significant increase.
We used to buy let's say, a parade of Malta Guinness at 5,800 or even maximum 6,000, but now it is 7,000. So you see that is my expenditure.
With the persistent ghost town, dealers in perishables who are highly affected have been advised to switch to other areas of business.
Ghost house businesses on and off. We're advising that women should diversify their business. They should get to those things that are not perishable. Say they can get to buy maize. We have divisional delegate of agriculture. They can take the money there. They can change their business. Try to buy maize, preserve the maize. We have them. They know that products that we can use, which are not hard.
Credit unions are also running out of business.
It has affected because majority of the project that we sponsor, contractors, their bills have not yet been paid. That is one big thing. If those bills were being paid, I'm telling you that it could have been more than this that you have seen.
My level of savings has stopped, and like many other members, they have experienced that. When we talk of business people, that the business has been at a standstill. So we find out that it has not only affected me, but most business.
Some of the microfinance institutions like the Agam Credit Union has pledged to increase loans to customers for encouragement and boosting of membership.
I have to increase the loans because I would dispatch my board of directors, my various committee management to go to the field to increase membership. If I will not the target of 10,000 members, I think I will know that I've done something to the nation, because this is the only vibrant financial institution in this division.
The people of Bamenda say they are now hoping for things to return to normal. And in few hours from now, women in Cameroon will join their peers worldwide to celebrate the 33rd edition of the International Women's Day. On the sidelines of the International Women's Day, a woman with an 8-year experience as a baker has called on her fellow women to take the challenge and dominate the profession, which many believe that it is widely reserved for men. She hails from Kupe Manenguba division of the Southwest region of Cameroon, and she says that gender should never be a barrier. Let's have the details with Innocent Aze.
She is a baker and relies on it for livelihood. What a man can do, a woman, they say, does it better. She was serving as sales girl at Manjo Bakery. To her, this was not her level, as she aspires to know how bread, cakes and other flour products are made before giving her to sell. Unfortunately, her manager she had consulted to teach her the whole process so she can begin serving as baker refused on grounds that it is solely a man's profession. She insisted and was finally integrated among men to bake. Today, she is an expert. Her employer, colleagues, as well as city dwellers admire her courage and profile. Marie Janwako remains adamant to the point that there is no particular task reserved only for men. She calls on other women to take the challenge and become great. She also urges government authorities to allow and encourage women fit in any shoe size.
And that brings us to the end of this first segment of the news. Next, we are going to be meeting our guest for tonight. Stay with us. We shall be right back. Tonight we have a senior barrister at law as guest. He is the national president of the Reform Party, Senior Barrister Ashu Agbo Emmanuel. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, Mimi. Good evening to the viewers.
Thank you so much for your time. Barrister, In the course of this newscast, we talked about the putting in place of the Constitutional Council and the members, the 11-man team that would be piloting the activities of the Constitutional Council that were sworn in today in a solemn ceremony in the nation's capital, Yaoundé. Barrister, what is the significance of the swearing-in ceremony of today?
Well, the swearing-in ceremony is launching the Constitutional Council into the job. From today, they have to start working. And this is going to be an electoral year, so they have to say goodbye to sleep.
It's going to be a busy year for them.
Very busy year for them.
It's been inaugurated at a time when it's highly needed with the electoral year at hand.
They should expect to meet me. I'll be coming before them.
Now, what exactly is their role, Barrister?
Well, the Constitutional Council is in charge of running elections, of declaring results, of entertaining petitions against petitions filed by various candidates against the conduct of elections. Well, it's true there are some that can go before the Departmental Commission, but the final petitions go to the Constitutional Council. Then it's also a court that sits in matters of constitutionality. But in those matters, it is only the head of state who can seize the court.
Apart from matters of constitutionality and running elections, what are other functions that they are supposed to carry out, the Constitutional Council?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay, Barrister, now many are questioning the putting in place of the Constitutional Council. We already have the Senate as well as the National Assembly. Of course, they are important institutions that Cameroon needs, but is it very important for the Constitutional Council to be put in place when we have the Senate and the National Assembly?
Well, the Constitutional Council has been in place for a long time. It's not, it is not by reason of this ceremony that it is coming into existence. Remember, the Supreme Court has been sitting in for the Constitutional Council. It has been doing the job of that council, so it's not a new thing.
But members were not...
They were sitting in. They were sitting in for them. So now that their own members have been appointed, they will have to do the job for which they have been appointed. They'll have to continue where the Supreme Court ended.
And it's now that the Constitutional Council has been put in place, it's according to you, it's just but normal because you have. It is one of
the institutions of the state. It must be put in place for it to assume the office for which it was created. So it was not very correct for the Supreme Court to be sitting in for the council. But now the council is in place. Okay, then let it do its job. I want to say that if Reform Party were to be in power, I would not want to have that type of council, because to us that thing is superfluous. Because the highest court of the land is the Supreme Court, not the Constitutional Council.
We saw the president of Senegal recently deleting or removing the Senate because, according to the president, is taking a lot of money and is not very necessary. Do you think that a similar situation can be very important for Cameroon?
If you listen to the launching of my presidential candidature, I said I will do basically the same thing. Concerning the Senate, if you look at the functions that have been given to our Senate, I think it is really needless to have that our house. It would have been better to have a House of Chiefs that represents the custodians of tradition, and that is made up of people that the whole society respects, than to have a Senate wherein you appoint 30 members out of 100, and the rest are elected from people who are looking towards their grave. So I think it's, and then the work they are doing, the current Senate is simply a house that gives an opinion. It's not like the American Senate that has the powers to overturn. 5 years
now, the Senate has not been able to bring to bear fruits for 5 years now that they have been existing.
Well, the Senate has done, for 5 years, it has done the work for which it was created. That is, give its opinion on bills that are coming from the Assembly, which is not supposed to be the case. They are supposed to act as an upper house that should overturn, and even scrap decisions from Parliament, bills from Parliament. See, the Senate is the upper house, but in the Cameroon context, it looks like it is an advisory body, because they give an opinion which the Parliament can take or not take. Because if the majority, they vote by majority, then it passes. Then their own position stands. So it's really needless.
Many believe that since it was the first mandate of the Senate, probably from this year 2018 to the next 5 years, we might see some changes, because that was the first time that
if a different
the Senate
party
was put in place in Cameroon.
If a different president is in place, you will expect to see a different Senate, because what is the problem? The problem is the duties of the Senate. The laws governing the Senate. They have created a Senate that is a toothless bulldog. That's the problem. The only important use of the Senate is that the Senate president is very important in case of vacancy of the presidency. That's all.
Now, Barrister, we have talked about the putting in place of the Constitutional Council. You are the national president of the Reform Party.
Yes.
Just a few days ago, you were announcing that you are going to be running as presidential candidate in Cameroon. With the putting in place now of the Constitutional Council, with many reports from opposition leaders in Cameroon how election results are not a reflection of the votes, do you think that there's going to be some changes?
The same thing that used to obtain before the Supreme Court will obtain before the Constitutional Council.
So there's no difference.
There's no difference.
In place of the Constitutional
No difference at all. The only difference is the change of personalities.
So why go in for election when you know that there will be no difference?
No, I said the difference, it will be the change in personalities. We will be seeing the people who have been singing at the Supreme Court. Now you'll be seeing those who have been appointed at the Constitutional Council. As for the running of the election, I said the Reform Party has an anti-electoral fraud plan that we are going to put in place, and we want CPDM to rehearse its fraud machinery, because we are going to beat them.
Tell us more about the machinery that you are planning to put in place.
We cannot give you our anti-electoral fraud plan. That will be getting the cat out of the bag.
But the electoral code is there, and the elections governing body, ELECAM, is going to be organizing the election. What is the Reform Party going to bring that is going to be different, to bring change?
ELECAM will run the elections, right? ELECAM does not proclaim results. You see, ELECAM is in charge of registering the voters and then conducting supervising the election, then collecting the results and channeling them to the Electoral Council, to the Constitutional Council. Its role ends there. ELECAM was supposed to go ahead like in other countries and proclaim the results. It is not for nothing they decided to limit ELECAM's role. So we have studied the system, and at every point we have solutions to curb fraud.
Barrister, one of those who have actually criticized governments of the management or on the management of the Anglophone crisis, you are one of them. Senior Barrister at Law, the president of the Reform Party in Cameroon. Now, going in for presidential election, is it not going to be legitimating the situation or the electoral process in Cameroon within and even out of the country?
Now, this is the problem is, if you don't go in for elections, you will be allowing CPDM to be there forever, and you will be prolonging the suffering of the Cameroonian people. So let us go in, use their rules to beat them, and then bring the sufferings of our people to an end. We have to dare, otherwise our people will not stop suffering. Because from what you are saying, the CPDM is not ready to let go.
So you think that taking part in the election is going to solve the crisis?
Yes.
Is it a solution to the
We have to go into this election, present our magnificent plan of action, which has a solution to all the problems that the Anglophones have been crying. Whatever the Anglophones have been clamoring for, we have the solutions. A good educational system, good healthcare system, good social housing, to put an end to this economic crisis. You know, Anglophones are straight people. They don't like corruption. We have the solution to end corruption. Misappropriation. Look at how they just allow states money. Everybody picks the thing and pockets, and they cash them and put them in prison. What? How does that help us? Stop them, first of all, from touching the money. You see, we will make sure that nobody gets to state funds. The funds should not be available so that people should be misappropriating them.
But how do you see the atmosphere? How do you foresee the atmosphere like in the northwest and the southwest regions of Cameroon during the election, looking at the situation at hand?
You see, I am calling on my brothers and sisters of northern and southwest to throw their weight behind a candidate like me, because if I pass, then their sufferings will come to an end. If not, then we will have to deal with a regime that keeps declaring war on them. killing people, burning villages, that is not a solution. You see, we have a solution to put in place the local government system that has been provided for in the constitution. Look at the constitution of Cameroon. It says clearly, Cameroon is a unitary, decentralized state. We see the CPDM governments that have been constantly violating the constitution by putting in place a centralized system of government that does not exist under the constitution. The constitution says the organs of Cameroon's organs of decentralization are the regions and the councils. That's clearly local government. There is no room for ministries. We have just had the creation of a ministry of decentralization to tell you that they don't intend to decentralize. Because you cannot decentralize within a centralized setup.
How will the people take part in the election when tens of thousands are seeking refuge in neighboring Nigeria?
Well,
how do you expect that things would normalize such that Anglophone Cameroonians will be able to return home and take part in the election?
They can vote.
They can vote in refugee camps?
They can vote. Those who are in Nigeria are not up to 1 million.
But there are tens of thousands.
There are tens of thousands. So far,
hundreds of thousands.
So far, we have counted about 100,000. That is not the total population of northwest and southwest regions. You see, we have refugees. But even with that, if the people see that there is somebody who is really carrying their hopes, they will come back and vote. They can still stay in Nigeria and vote. You know, you don't need to be in Cameroon to vote. Even from outside, you can still vote. We have a Cameroon embassy there. Elections can be organized and they will participate.
You mean they should go to the embassy in Nigeria?
We have a system whereby Cameroonians of the diaspora can vote. So it is not a bad thing for them. They can still vote in Nigeria. The problem is that they have to get to rally their support behind a candidate that can deliver the goods. It doesn't serve any person to say we want federalism. When you know that, legally speaking, you cannot get federalism by the wish of one person. That touches the form of the state, and the form of the state is something for Cameroonians as a whole to decide. It's not for one man. Even Mr. Biya cannot decide on federalism. He cannot. We have to sit down and decide, and then the people will say, okay, let's go to a referendum.
So federalism is not a possibility now?
No, you see, our constitution says that our state is unitary and decentralized. Until that is changed, you cannot put any other form on the table. The way you can only change it is through a referendum or through constitutional change in parliament. And until that is done, all the political actors are bound to respect what exists. That is the law.
Thank you, Barrister, for joining us tonight on Talking Point. We hope to have you some other time again.
You're welcome.
To our viewers, it was equally a pleasure having with us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television, wishing you a blessed stay in the company of our programs until we meet again. Goodbye.